Some choices changed the course of history, their impact spreading like cracks through ancient stone. Among these fractures, none ran deeper than when Gandalf reached for the ring instead of turning away. This is the tale of how one wizard's desire to protect became something far greater and far darker. In the quiet hills of the Shire, where hobbits tended their gardens and knew nothing of the wider world's dangers, a simple golden ring lay hidden in Bag End. It remained there while darkness gathered strength in the east. For 17 years after Bilbo vanished from his birthday feast, Gandalf the Grey searched for answers, each discovery deepening his dread. The search nearly consumed him. His grey robes grew ragged as he raced between archives and libraries, changing horses 20 times across the western lands. In Minas Tirith, he hunched over crumbling scrolls that spoke of rings of power, while nervous keepers whispered about his growing desperation. In Rivendell, he consulted with the eldest of the Eldar, immortal beings who had witnessed the ring's first rise and fought in the last alliance. Between these searches, he traced Sauron's growing strength, marking maps where empty watchtowers now held orc garrisons, tracking supply lines that crossed the Anduin like spiderwebs, uncovering spies in every major realm from Rohan to Gondor. Each discovery pointed to calculated preparation for war, yet the enemy himself seemed focused elsewhere, searching for something lost long ago in the Shire. Spring of 3018 drew Gandalf back to the Shire after his final journey east. The wizard's staff struck Bag End's door as evening shadows spread across Hobbiton. Inside Frodo's study, where Bilbo had once written tales of dragons and gold, Gandalf performed the test he had dreaded for 17 years. His gnarled hands held the ring above the hearthfire. Ancient words crawled across its surface, burning with their own light. The black speech of Mordor, crafted by Sauron himself when he forged this ring in Mount Doom's fires. The One Ring had waited here through countless peaceful afternoons while hobbits smoked their pipes and tended their gardens. Frodo stood before him, arm outstretched with the ring in his palm. The wizard's heart grew heavy as he considered the Shire's fading defenses. The ancient protections that had long shielded this peaceful land were crumbling, while the rangers of the north, once numerous enough to guard the frontiers, had dwindled to a mere handful. Their camps lay empty, their watchfires cold. His mind raced through the dire tidings he had gathered. Dark riders were mustering in Minas Morgul, while the creature Gollum, under torture, had yielded the fateful words Shire and Baggins to echo through the halls of Barad-dûr. Sauron's armies pressed westward. Orcs multiplied in the mountains, corsairs gathered their fleets, the Haradrim assembled their war elephants. A hobbit carrying the ring east would not survive, or so he thought. The choice became clear to Gandalf. The Valar had sent him across the sea to combat the power of Sauron and protect the peoples of Middle-earth. And he knew that the vast powers hidden within his mortal form could be unleashed to confront any threat. His fingers closed around the ring. The metal felt heavier and warmer than it should. As Gandalf took the ring, he accepted the burden and the challenges that lay ahead. Within days of taking the ring, Gandalf mounted his horse and rode east. His path diverged sharply from what might have been. No hobbits wandering lost through the old forest's dangers, no time spent hiding from unfriendly eyes. The wizard chose direct routes over hidden ones, pushing his Rohirric steed to its limits along the east road. Villages and towns blurred past unseen as he kept to the road's edges, avoiding travelers and settlements. In Minas Morgul, the 9 riders remained stationary, awaiting commands that had not yet come. The ruins of Arnor rose and fell around him as he pressed eastward. Ancient watchtowers crumbled at the roadside, their empty windows tracking his passage. His horse's hooves thundered across the last bridge's weathered stones. The misty mountains loomed closer each day, their peaks piercing the clouds to his left as he followed their foothills. But each night when Gandalf made camp, the ring's influence crept deeper. Dreams of armies marching under his banner turned to thoughts of protected borders, then to visions of peaceful realms united under wise rule. The ring whispered of power used for protection, of strength turned to guidance, of a united Middle-earth free from chaos. The spires of Rivendell rose before him in early June 3018. Lord Elrond stood waiting at the gates, his ancient eyes fixed on Gandalf's approach. The ring's presence had announced itself long before the wizard crossed the valley's threshold. Within hours, Elrond summoned his most trusted warriors to a secret chamber deep within the last homely house. No delegates from distant lands gathered here. Only Glorfindel, whose battle with a Balrog had ended in both their deaths, and a handful of elven warriors who still bore scars from the ring's first reign of terror. The council's verdict echoed through Rivendell's halls. The ring must return to Mordor's fires. Yet even as they spoke, the ring's power worked through their deliberations. Gandalf's voice grew stronger in the council, his arguments more compelling. His position as bearer of Narya, combined with his status as an Istari, made his offer to lead the mission to Mordor seem not just reasonable, but inevitable. The council members nodded in agreement, unaware that their wisdom had already begun to bend toward the ring's will. In July 3018, 8 elven warriors departed Rivendell, with Gandalf at their lead. No dwarf's axe or hobbit's innocence accompanied them, only ancient blades that had tasted orc blood since the First Age. They struck south toward the Gap of Rohan, moving through shadows and mist. Crebain from Dunland circled above the company's path, their black wings casting searching shadows. These birds, twisted by Saruman's sorcery into spies, found only undisturbed grass where 9 figures had passed moments before. The White Wizard's human agents prowled the wilderness, hunters, wandering merchants, seeming travelers, but discovered nothing. Boromir, son of Denethor, driving his horse hard northward under the weight of prophetic dreams, camped one night atop a ridge where Gandalf's company had rested that morning. He found only cold ashes that revealed nothing of their makers. The ring's influence revealed itself in blood. A group of highwaymen emerged from the rocks, thinking to find easy prey. Gandalf raised his staff before they could speak a word. Their bodies turned to ash where they stood. A village headman approached the company, offering shelter while his men prepared an ambush. By nightfall, the village's buildings burned with white fire that consumed wood, stone, and flesh alike. The elven warriors, who had fought in wars since the First Age, watched their leader's transformation with growing dread. The Gandalf, who had once spent hours teaching young hobbits, now struck without warning or mercy. They remembered the last time the One Ring had turned wisdom into ruthless power, yet none dared speak against the combined might of Ringlord and Istari. Orthank's Black Tower rose before them in September. Gandalf came to seek counsel with the head of his order, Saruman. The White Wizard had spent centuries studying the rings of power. If anyone could provide guidance about the ring, it would be him, he thought. Gandalf passed alone through the iron gates, leaving his elven warriors in the ring of Isengard. In his high chamber, Saruman greeted him with measured words and cold courtesy. The White Wizard spoke of power and necessity, of order in an age of chaos. His eyes never left the chain at Gandalf's throat where the One Ring hung. "The ring you carry," Saruman said, his voice hardening. "I have sought it for years, studying its lore, preparing for this moment." His staff rose, his other hand reaching forward. "Give it to me, old friend. Together we could reshape these lands, bring true order to—" The attack came before he finished speaking. Saruman's staff struck with forces that shook Orthanc to its foundations. Stone cracked, glass shattered. As the White Wizard's power pressed closer, the ring's whispers grew stronger. Raw power pulsed within the golden band, promising an end to this battle. With no other choice remaining, Gandalf slipped the golden band onto his finger. Power surged through the Grey Wizard. Light blazed from his form, shattering the chamber's remaining windows. The One Ring's might flowed into Narya, the Ring of Fire on his other hand. They burned away his grey robes and replacing them with blinding white. Saruman struck first, hurling spells that had shattered castle walls, but they dissipated harmlessly against Gandalf's transformed presence. Gandalf raised his staff. The blast that followed unmade Saruman's defenses. The White Wizard's final cry cut short as forces he had only dreamed of wielding crushed him against Orthank's black walls. His staff split in two, his body crumpled. The stones around him cracked from floor to ceiling. The greatest of the Istari died reaching for power that had already chosen its new master. The elven warriors rushed to Orthanc when the sounds of battle ceased, finding Gandalf amid the chamber's destruction. His silence answered their unspoken questions about Saruman's fate. He commanded them to secure Isengard's grounds and guard its gates. No one would enter while he examined Saruman's legacy. The elves obeyed, though they saw something different in their leader's eyes now, something that made them grip their ancient blades more tightly. For days, they watched from the grounds below as their leader moved through the tower's levels, claiming Saruman's secrets. In the tower's highest room, Gandalf discovered what Saruman had hidden from all, a palantir, one of the 7 seeing stones of Númenor. Through it, he witnessed Sauron's armies gathering, saw the 9 riding from Minas Morgul, sensed their approach. He waited in Orthanc, letting the ring's power settle into his flesh. As he watched the growing darkness through the Seeing Stone, Gandalf made his choice. He would not destroy the ring, but wield it to protect Middle-earth himself. The Valar had sent him to guard these lands, after all. The 9 arrived at Isengard within days. Their black horses stamped the courtyard stones as Gandalf descended Orthanc's steps. The Ring Lord raised his hand, the one ring blazing with power that had bound these wraiths an age ago. Like Sauron before him, Gandalf was one of the Maya, divine beings from before the world's making, and now he wielded the same power that had enslaved the 9. Ancient spells of dominion woke within the Golden Band. The Nazgul screamed their defiance across the valley, 8 piercing cries that rose, then died as they bowed to their new master. Gandalf unleashed his servants across Middle-earth. The Witch King led strikes against Sauron's hidden strongholds, while his brothers hunted the Dark Lord's spies. A village in the Anduin Valley disappeared in a single night. Its secret forges for Orcish weapons were discovered. Its inhabitants were eliminated, and its buildings were reduced to ash. 3 Orc camps in the Misty Mountains vanished between moonset and sunrise. Scouts found only trampled grounds and cold fire pits, the Orcs' weapons scattered as if dropped in blind panic. By October, Gandalf rode for Minas Tirith. The White City had to be secured. Its position, its armies, and its ancient knowledge were too vital to leave under questionable leadership. The 9 formed a dark wedge behind their new master as they approached the White City. Guards on the outer walls saw their coming and fled their posts. The great gates of each circle swung open, abandoned. No sword was drawn, no bow bent. The sight of the Gandalf commanding the 9 broke the city's will without a battle. In the Tower of Ecthelion, Denethor clutched his palantir with trembling hands. The Seeing Stone had shown him the full scope of Gandalf's transformed power. The steward barred his doors and strengthened ancient wards, preparing for a confrontation he could not hope to win. The battle for Minas Tirith was brief. Gandalf broke through Denethor's defenses as he climbed the Tower of Ecthelion, floor by floor. The steward's weapons and spells fell harmless against the power of 2 rings. In Denethor's hands, Gandalf saw the palantir that had revealed his transformation. The Seeing Stone made its master too dangerous to be left alive. His final screams echoed through the Tower of Ecthelion as fire consumed him, leaving only ash and a blackened throne. By nightfall, Gandalf sat in the steward's chair. The city's administrators pledged themselves to his service. Ancient protocols and procedures bent to serve Gandalf now. As winter deepened, Gandalf dispatched the 9 with precise orders. He sent them through army camps like poison, whispering ancient hatreds into sleeping ears. Within days, commanders turned their swords against each other. Tribal chieftains called for blood against former allies. Orc battalions erupted in savage mutiny, tearing their leaders apart in nights of frenzy. Haradrim supply lines collapsed as scouts led entire caravans into ambushes set by their own people. Easterling war chiefs vanished from heavily guarded tents, leaving only cold fire pits and untouched weapons. Every dawn revealed new wounds in Sauron's forces, each betrayal spreading the infection deeper. Then, as spring arrived, Gandalf turned his attention to the Elven realms, knowing their ancient powers could not remain independent in his vision of a protected Middle-earth. The Third Age was ending, the time of the elves fading with it. Their realms, though beautiful, were isolated sanctuaries that divided the lands he sought to unite and secure. Gandalf struck their defenses like a hammer against glass. Lothlorien's golden leaves blackened and fell. Rivendell's ancient stones cracked and shifted, 3 ages of enchantment unraveling at Gandalf's approach. Through their rings of power, Galadriel and Elrond watched helplessly as his influence devoured their lands. His terms arrived written in elegant script, a promise of protection through unity, order through submission. At sunset, they signed away their realms, and the powers of Nenya and Vilya bent to Gandalf's will, adding their strength to his grand design for a unified Middle-earth. With the power of 3 rings now at his command, Gandalf's vision of order spread swiftly across Middle-earth. The Shire, once protected by its very insignificance, could no longer remain a realm apart. Construction began within days of its surrender. Iron towers thrust through the rolling hills like spears through flesh. The Bounders shed their walking sticks for sword steel, their warm welcomes for cold suspicion. Every tavern held watching eyes, every market whispered with informants. Every family gathering risked betrayal. Hobbit children learned new lessons: keep your voice low, watch the shadows, fear the heavy knock at nightfall that meant someone had spoken against the new order. As summer reached its peak, Gandalf assembled his forces before Barad-dûr. He stood with the 9 spread behind him like a dark wing, while Sauron's broken forces cowered behind their walls. The clash shook Middle-earth to its bones. Lightning split the sky. The ground cracked open, swallowing ancient stonework into newborn chasms. Gandalf struck down Sauron with terrible swiftness, ending the Dark Lord's reign in a single devastating blow. Without its master, Barad-dûr crumbled into rubble, its ancient stones ground to dust by Gandalf's power. With Mordor conquered, Gandalf turned westward to establish his reign. He claimed Minas Tirith as his capital, raising its white towers higher than ever before. The White Order of Gandalf spread across the lands. Armies marched in perfect formation, messengers rode on precise schedules, every village and town reported to the central authority. From his new throne, Gandalf created an order more absolute than Sauron had ever dreamed possible. Peace settled over Middle-earth like shiny iron chains. Merchant caravans now moved along predetermined paths, their goods checked at each watchtower. Scholars taught only approved texts in regulated schools. Musicians played sanctioned melodies in designated halls. The forests of Fangorn fell to ordered plantations. The brown lands transformed into neat agricultural plots. The great eagles vanished from the skies, hunted down for refusing to serve as messengers. The Ents retreated deep into unmapped forests, their numbers dwindling each year. Desert tribes found their ancient migration paths blocked by garrison walls, forced to settle in monitored villages. Rangers patrolled every road, every village, every gathering. Middle-earth's transformation erased the age of men before it began. Order dominated where freedom once flourished. Gandalf's reach extended through the 9, their presence felt in every major city. These wraiths moved silently through streets and alleys, their unseen gaze marking every deviation, every whispered protest, every unregulated meeting. His human agents filled taverns and marketplaces, noting conversations, tracking movements, enforcing compliance. The Ring Lord's power flowed through them all, turning every report, every observation, every captured secret into tools of control, all in the name of protection. From his White Tower, Gandalf watched his realm through the Palantir he had claimed from Denethor. His gaze lingered longest on the Shire, where it had all begun. The Hobbit's simple gardens and cheerful gatherings, once symbols of the peace he had sought to protect, now struck him as dangerous remnants of chaos. Through the seeing stone, he observed children being taught the new songs of order, watched farmers learning to plant in strict rows, saw families gathering only at appointed times with observers present. When reports came of a hobbit child singing an old walking song about adventure, Gandalf dispatched the Nazgul themselves to investigate. Threats must be contained, he thought to himself. Gandalf's victory reshaped the Middle-earth. His power reached deeper, spread wider, controlled more thoroughly than mere darkness. Every decree issued from the White Tower brought more order, more regulation, more restriction, each enforced for the common good, each punishment necessary for stability. The wizard who once lit fireworks for hobbit children was gone. In his place sat only a ring lord on his white throne, commanding his perfect order.